Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor, reporting from somewhat soggy New Orleans, Louisiana. Actually, not to be trivial about it, it's the morning of Wednesday, the 26th of August that we're recording this morning Central Time. And Hurricane Laura, which has just been upgraded to a Category 3, is about 200 miles from us in New Orleans, and it's so big that we are actually feeling we got about 25-mile-per-hour gusts right now. It's expected to make landfall somewhere around Lake Charles, Louisiana, Beaumont, Texas, late this evening as a Category 4. So we're just mindful of all the folks who are out there. There was just an emergency message that the governors of Texas and Louisiana and the National Hurricane Center have said they're going to stop evacuations at 4 o'clock this afternoon because they expect the surge from the water at that point to be, in their words, unsurvivable. And they will have to close down Highway 10, the interstate that goes east-west across Louisiana and much of Texas. So hoping that everybody's safe. By the time you hear this, you'll probably have some more reports of what transpired over the course of the last several days. So, Rachi, Messing, of course, is with us as always, still from Tel Aviv. Rob?
Still from Tel Aviv. I was out on the water actually last night on the Mediterranean Sea, and we did not have 25 mile an hour, 35 mile an hour gusts. We had about 1.5 mile per hour gusts. It was beautiful. So yeah. a little different experience over here, but yeah, definitely.
What's the water temperature there? Is the water warm at this time of year?
It is definitely warm. So, yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, our guest today is someone who has a residence half the year in a part of the country that is not such warm weather, warm water, or weather for that matter. But the water on the North Shore of Boston, which I'm familiar with, is a little bit more frigid than that even at the best of times. Don Swanson, the president and owner of 5-Star Legal and Compliance. Don has a home on the North Shore of Boston, but also operates the business out of Los Angeles. So he's coast to coast. And where are you today, Don?
I'm in Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. Beautiful little North Shore town, and happy to be here. And it's warm today.
Oh, good. And you're not far, just so people get a sense of bearing, you're not far from our friend Bob Ambrosi, right?
That's correct. Bob Ambrosi is just up the line in Rockport, just 10 miles up the road, and on the same train line. And we get together. We just got together for lunch just a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah. And
how about our colleague David Horrigan of Relativity? I know he lives in a somewhat more Tony little neighborhood on his own private island, right?
That's a very nice peninsula in the Nahant. It's also on the North Shore, and it's also close. Rachi,
we're going to have to establish a compound on the North Shore of Boston. It's clearly where everything's happening in the legal.
It seems to be a very popular area. So
yeah. My folks, my family is all from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump up the road from there. A little neck of New Hampshire that extends out in between, just barely in between Maine and Massachusetts, and is of course the home of the Portsmouth Naval Yard and submarine base for years and years. But so I spent most of the summers of my youth in Portsmouth, and I'm familiar with that area. So, Don, you and I have known each other for more years than I am willing to acknowledge, but certainly when we first met, my beard was not this shade, and my hair came down to here, I believe. So we both met each other in the early days of the Summation litigation support empire, and when I say the early days, I mean the DOS days, right? We go way back on that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this crazy business?
Yeah, my story is that I went to college at the University of Denver. I was a restaurant management major. That's what I thought in a hotel and restaurant management. I thought that was my future. I thought it was actually, I had relatives in that business. I thought I was convinced that was going to be my career. And took me 4 years of college and a couple of jobs to realize I didn't want to do that. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I got a call from my father, and he said, have you ever thought about being a paralegal? And I said, what's a paralegal? He said, I don't know, but your sister thinks it's a good idea. And so why don't you go to school with her? So I didn't have any other ideas. And he said, I heard it's a good growing field and, it's a good fallback. And so my sister and I went to paralegal school together at the University of San Diego. And that's how I got into it. My first job was right out of school there in San Diego. And that's how I got started.
Wow. And when did 5-Star come into being?
Yeah, so I worked at San Diego Gas and Electric for about a year. I was paralegal there, and then I worked at Boston Edison Company. My then girlfriend, now wife, was working for WMUR TV in New Hampshire as the Portsmouth bureau chief, just to tie a little thing together. And I decided that it was maybe time to get married, so I came out and took a job in Boston, and we were here for about 5 years and started a family. And then I decided I wanted to start a company. And I just thought that this idea of a paralegal with like a technical paralegal company that was part temp agency, part, paralegal company was going to have a best chance in California, where things were just a little bit more, they were willing to try new things, than Boston. So we moved back to LA in 1992 and started the company then. So it's been, we're coming up on 30 years.
Wow. That's great. That's great.
Yes.
So all of your paralegal experience was at a corporation, nothing at a law firm. Wow. That's
true. Yeah. Solely courts, and just really 2 electric utilities, was.
So what was it like, going from school directly into a corporation as a paralegal? Obviously you had some technical knowledge or capabilities going in. Was there a focus on technology? Was that the expectation that you should know how to do things from a technical perspective, or was the expectation initially just traditional paralegal approach from in the mid 80s?
Yeah, so that's right. It was 1987. I graduated from paralegal school. This is certainly, just when personal computers were just coming onto the scene. Really, secretaries had them, but back then at San Diego Gas Electric, I built a little database of their paper pleading files, and that was kind of a novel idea, to have a database of them where you could look up and the index of the pleading files. And so that was literally my first database experience then. I don't think there was any expectation necessarily, and I didn't have training to do this, but the paralegal role fit in nicely to fill in that job of automating certain things that were done manually before. So.
And then
how did you segue from that to Summation? Because that's right around the same time that I was undergoing a similar experience. The statement about a database for my paper documents was literally what we were doing on a massive case that I was involved in. It was venued in Sacramento at the time, and we somehow came across this fledgling company called Summation, which was starting up in San Francisco. You same way? You just kind of came across it?
Actually, so I went from San Diego Gas and Electric. I decided to kind of get married and move to Boston and ask my wife to marry, my girlfriend to marry and get married. And when I went to San Diego, I was their first ever paralegal at Boston Edison Company. They had never had one before. Wow. And we had a huge case involving our nuclear power plant. Like, it was the type of case that if they wanted to, it could have bankrupted the company. And we had, when it comes to a nuclear power plant, there's no limit on the number of questions you can ask. We had 4,000 interrogatories, actually. And we had millions of pages of discovery, paper discovery. And we used
the Seabrook plant, was it?
It was actually no, it wasn't Seabrook, which is in New Hampshire. It was in Pilgrim, which is in
Oh,
Plymouth,
yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yep.
And so we had all these. We had hundreds of transcripts of from all these different, the FERC, the state. It was just a lot of information. And believe it or not, I had, over the 4 years that I was there, I had 50 paralegals working for me. I was the one permanent paralegal. Yeah, and we used the summation to just kind of manage the interrogatories, manage the transcripts, just so that the attorneys could say, like for an example, they would say interrogatory 4,000. Well, we'd say, well, we answered that at 3,200, 1,850, 712, and interrogatory number 6. And where our answer was, we don't know. So.
And people forget that was early on. That was a real, well, not that it wasn't later either, but at the very beginning of Summation, the ability to have a database and search transcripts and link to what were the exhibits or potential exhibits was really a
revolutionary
breakthrough at the time. Yeah, there were programs that did each independently, but to have a coordinated or an integrated program like that was great. Don has not mentioned that he grew that into 5-star, became, if not the largest, you were certainly in the top 2 or 3 Summation channel partners in the country for a long time, right, Don? I mean, you were substantially involved in their ecosystem, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was really, I mean, it was a great program, actually. It solved problems. I'm still amazed today that there seems to be less talk of transcript management, that, people are so focused on e-discovery, but they don't talk about depot transcripts. And I'm just, it's kind of curious to me today how that, which was really the beachhead for Summation, transcript management was their beachhead. But now it just seems like it's not thought of as much as, traditional e-discovery.
Well, I think 2 things have happened. I mean, this is my take on it. One, just standard word searching has become easier to do. If I get a transcript file, the ability to load it and look at it and use just standard off-the-shelf software to search it has become far, far easier. But I also think with the advent of e-discovery, we're having less depositions. And we get our documents earlier in the process now. It used to be you had to go to the deposition, ask them to bring documents, get the documents introduced or produced, and then take them back and, maybe try to ask some pointed questions. But now, especially in federal courts, with the advent of the early meet and confer, we often are going into a deposition with the documents that are crucial. We've already found them.
Right. I think
we have, pointed question. So not only are we having, I think, less deposition, obviously as cases settle more too, there's far less cases going to trial, but also we don't have to search as much through the transcript to find things, because in many cases we already know what the key documents are, and we're trying to get more information about when did this one come, where did this one come from, is this your signature, did you see this, blah blah. That's
right. I think that knowledge piece, the knowledge confirmation piece, like, is just, as you say, it's so prevalent now that you're able to actually know, okay, Don received this document on this time and it said this. I mean, it's just so easy to get to that information today that, the need to rely on the transcripts is a lot less. I just, in general, in the stuff that I'm doing, I see very little transcripts coming across the table. So it's interesting. But Don, so you went from the corporate world to starting your own company, which obviously can be a little scary at times as you go out on your own. And obviously you've built it into a very successful endeavor. how did that change, over the 25 years since you guys actually started? What kinds of things have you seen in the industry that kind of were like true shocking, things that just shifted from then to now? I mean, obviously there's a lot, but what are the things that stand out in your mind?
Well, for sure, back when I first started, it was a temp agency, and we would get called up by companies or law firms and said, we need 20 people to go through boxes, and we need them for 2 months or 3 months. And when we would send people to do these routine and manual tasks, just send teams of people over, and we were a temp agency. And that really, I think, changed. We're not really doing that anymore. We're sending people in for basic paralegal type work. And so we've shifted our work to these databases that have emerged. And there's a few big ones out there. I just won't name names, but that people they're needing to learn these tools and how to apply them and how to put data in and when to put data in and what they're missing. And so having a consultant, somebody with experience like Tom, that can help out and guide an organization into the proper use of the tools, that's become kind of our bread and butter is being I guess a little bit of an evangelist to help them use the tool, and then also a trainer to help them use the tool properly, and then maybe a little bit of that consulting side so that you can set up the documentation so that their team can go forward and use it, on an ongoing basis.
So what are you seeing for tools these days, Don? I mean, you went from, being a proponent of Summation, and they went through some ownership changes over the years. And I wouldn't say they've gone away. I think there's still a substantial number of corporate users, especially in government agencies, who are using Summation. But what are you seeing out there now? More diversity of tools?
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying this because Rocky's on the line, but I've completely bought into the Microsoft story. When data moved from on-premise to the cloud, and the tools that were built into the cloud, and by the way, in my opinion, Microsoft kind of won the cloud battle with Microsoft 365. Government agencies, corporations, education, across the board, they won. And now that all this data is sitting in this environment, there's tools built into, and this is the fundamental change in my opinion. E-discovery in our world forever has been a copy first mentality. We start with a copy. The old thing was you never work on the original. That was the very first thing you were taught. And now in this new model, you can work on the data in place. And that is a completely different mindset that I don't think actually has been realized by the market yet. But if you're talking about what's new, I think that's new. I think it's a big deal, and I think the ramifications are still being playing out.
Why copy label copy?
Why do you think that corporation? I mean, you're in there. You're consulting with corporations all the time. Why do you think that idea of these changes in the cloud hasn't grabbed on? Like, I think you have a great point that realization of what's possible and what you can already do there is just not realized. And I see it a little bit. I mean, I'm asked a lot of times to go in and talk to clients, and I see it to some degree. But you're actually in there consulting with them, talking to them, getting into it much deeper than either I am and Tom to some degree. Why do you think that they're still behind? Why do you think that most corporations just aren't getting it yet?
Because I think they have legacy processes in place, and so they have other software tools, and this isn't the way that we do things. I think their general answer, and they have a process in place to do them, and it's worked over the years, and it still works. But the truth of the matter is that they're probably more expensive, certainly less efficient, and they're just not taking advantage of the tools. But I think that there's a huge benefits to the in-place story, and I'm completely convinced it wins.
So right now, from a business perspective, are you mostly leading with the cloud? I mean, is that where the majority of your business is coming from? Is training, consulting? I mean, what's the makeup today?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I should point out that what we're talking about is organizations managing their data that they have to deal with for their own internal investigations, their own regulatory matters they're responding to, their own litigation. But if you're in litigation and you're a corporation, sometimes you're receiving information. Or if you're a law firm, you get both your client's data and the other side's data. And, that's a different story. And there's I would say traditional e-discovery tools for that. So this thing that I'm talking about is more of a narrow focus from the organization that is really the one that benefits from dealing with things internally. So I don't think that need for a good traditional litigation support database goes away. But the way to leverage your own in-house data is the part of the model that can change. But
that's a huge shift in the paradigm of how we work, right, Don? I mean, traditionally, as you said, and I had this conversation with the managing partner of a big firm here in New Orleans earlier in the year, pre-virus. But he said, I used to get a call from a client, a corporate client, who would say, we got this big case. Do you want to use your copy service, or should I call somebody? We'll copy all those documents, and I'm going to send them over to you, and you do that summation magic thing you do and get it all ready. Now, he said he gets a call from a client who says, I want to let you know we got a case coming up. We just, we've got something brewing, and my IT guys are using our internal tools to cull down what it is, and we'll send you a DVD or a couple of CDs with the documents on them in about 3 or 4 weeks, so you can do what you do. And that upsets the law firm business model immensely, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't make a lot of money on document review like you used to.
Yeah.
So is that good or bad? I mean, again, from your perspective, starting off in a corporate environment years ago.
Well, I would say it depends, right? Like if the corporation does it poorly and they give a poor subset of the documents, then maybe that's not good if they're not really doing a diligent job. But on the other hand, if it's done well, it can be efficient and time saving and money saving and faster, cheaper, and better, right? So
how do you help corporations to do it well? I mean,
right.
I think that's where it really comes down to. The tools are out there, right? Yeah. But and maybe this is giving away your tricks of the trade, but what are some of the tips and tricks that you're really trying to focus the companies on when you're talking to them that will get them to shift their mindset and be able to do it well? Because I agree, anyone can run a search, do some things. I mean, and it doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean it's accurate, and it doesn't mean that it's getting the information. Discovery is not about providing documents, right? Discovery is providing the right information that is relevant to the case. So how do you help them actually understand what that process needs to look like?
Yeah, so I'm a non-attorney, right? So I will always preface it by saying that up front. But I think that if you buy into the model again, and as I mentioned, I do, if you have the ability to preserve documents in place, then all of a sudden you don't need to bulk copy everything out. And so there's a less of, the fallback position was, let's just take everything and we'll figure it out later. So I think if you can preserve in place, then you can be more surgical in pulling things out, and also know that you have another chance to take a second bite at the apple. And that's different than, there was a fear that you would never have a chance for a second bite, so you take everything up front. So I think, again, buying into this in-place model, you can actually test things out, but knowing you can go back without any penalty.
Right, that safety net.
It is a safety net, right, Rocky? I think that's it. And I'm not sure that people get that or buy into it as much as I buy into it right now.
Okay.
Well, I think you're right. I think the biggest challenge now is not the technology. It's, as always, the workflow, and explaining to people why this just makes so much more sense from a technical point of view, from a cost savings point of view, from a time savings point of view, and as you said, the ability to go back. Oh, if there's a problem, you don't think we got something, you think we missed something, all the standard arguments we have in the discovery phase between parties. Well, no problem. Just go back and do it again. We got it. Everything's still there.
Yep. So looking forward over the next 5 years, what, or maybe, I guess that's part of the question, is how long do you think it's going to take for corporations to actually make that shift to change that mindset? And I guess that's part of the question is when you're looking at it from a business perspective, like how much of a runway do you have right now before, well, that's just the way it is and everyone's doing it, and you need to look at, what's the next big thing?
Right. Well, I think that organizations are figuring it out, and they're figuring it out because everybody's trying to save money right now, and this is a way to save money. Everybody's trying to do things faster. This is a way to do things faster. So there's and again, we happen to be talking about these cloud productivity suites like G Suite or Microsoft 365 that provide organizations a way to get to their data in a new way. So yeah, I think that is something that it's definitely picking up momentum already. And I think that as people start moving around in jobs and say, oh, we did this in our prior organization, it's just going to become, I'm quite convinced it'll just become quite normal that people are used to the in-place model.
Right. Has the pandemic affected the rate of change that you're seeing specifically in your business in the consulting side?
It's been a little bit of a mixed bag. In some respects, people say we don't have money, that's happened. But on the other hand, people say, we're using Zoom meetings or we're using Teams, and we don't know how to collect that information. So there is definitely an increase in that. And it's surprising. You're talking about large organizations that are subject to a lot of litigation, and they don't know how to collect from that data source. So
what do we got there? An airplane? A garbage truck?
That was, I think, yeah, truck. I live in the city. I live on the main road. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
No problem.
All good.
Hey, that brings up a good point, though, Don. We've talked as long as we've been talking here now without once mentioning the word COVID virus. How has that affected your work, or has it?
It's setting up meetings with people is different, of course. We've had 5 years in a row, we've done a workshop. It's been a big annual event for us with some premier customers, and I don't think we're going to be able to do that this year. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. So I don't, so there's been differences. In the other respect, I would say it's been great to get to know people better, because I think people have opened up about their lives, and so that you can have a chance to have some real conversations with people in a way that maybe it didn't happen before. a little bit of personal caring for people.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I find that, the first couple minutes of all meetings seem to not just be, no matter who it's with, even on someone making a sales call, it's not just the dive in, let's get to product, let's get to workflow, let's get to whatever the topic is. It does seem to be a little bit more personal and a little bit more, okay, how's your mental health? How's your family? How's it affecting your specific community? I mean, it's definitely grown there. That's an interesting point. So, yeah. Okay, Tom, you take us out with a final question.
So, Don, we do this with all of our guests every other week when we speak to them, and that is to ask if you could spend a day, not necessarily in a business setting, even just sitting around at Manchester by the Sea, walking down to the beach, in any place, and it would be one person from our profession, and it could be living or dead, somebody who's here now or who's left us. Who would that person be?
Well, it's a great question, Tom. I'm a fan of your work here, and so I've been hearing these questions and answers. And I have to say, on a personal level, one of the things I've always dreamed about is to have a dinner party. I love dinner parties with all of my relatives from generations gone by, like decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, at one long dinner table. And just to be able to experience that, to have all these relatives who I've never known or heard their voice and just listen to their stories. So the idea of being able to do something special like this is something that resonates with me. We have a lot of great people and have had a lot of great people in our industry, but I'm going to twist it just a little bit and say if I could spend a day with somebody in our industry, I would like to actually have somebody who's 20 years from now or 30 years, let's say the year 2050, that would come back to me today in 2020, and just an average person, and explain to me what they're doing, and just so I could see the future, and that would help me in my thinking. And yeah.
Or they'd be like that scene in the Star Trek movie where they go back to San Francisco to rescue a whale or something, and
Right.
Dr. McCoy is watching somebody take somebody's temperature and give them a shot, and he shakes his head. Barbarian. Like,
Yeah.
would people think we're just technical troglodytes with what we're doing now? So,
Right.
a great answer. So I got to ask before we leave, the one more. It's a two-part question. What is that book that's on the shelf behind you?
Oh, yeah. So it's by the former general counsel of General Electric, Heinemann, and he wrote a book called The Inside Counsel Revolution. Very,
Right.
very interesting book, and it just talks about governance. And yeah, it's interesting. Really well written. The guy's a master writer, and if you're interested in that, it's a great read.
Okay, good. Thank you. And the painting on the wall behind you, is that a Wyatt?
No, it's not. It's some English artist named Morris. I picked it up at an auction for $100 many, many, many years ago, and I kind of like it.
There it is.
Well, Liz doesn't like it, so it's in my office.
I'm familiar. You can't see the background. My collection of Boston Celtics memorabilia that signed pictures by Casey Jones and Larry Bird and Dave Town. Gail just doesn't appreciate the cultural phenomenon that is the Boston Celtics.
Rough lives we live.
Yeah.
Well, Don, it's been great speaking to you. We're right now, it's in day 3 of the ILTA virtual conference.
Right.
You and I would probably be having a conversation and even doing a recording. And Rocky would be there as well, live at ILTA right around this time of year. It's one of the big transformations of our profession that, we haven't been able to gather and all get to see each other. There's a lot of people in our business I only would see at one of the 2 or 3 big conferences every year. So it was great to get together with you at least like this and say hi. Rocky and I, of course, are bemoaning the lack of cigar smoking. We should have a virtual smoke-in one day. Invite everybody with all our cigar smoking friends to come on board. But Don, how long are you in Massachusetts for? The summer?
Yeah, I head back west in a few weeks, like almost just under 3 weeks.
Right after Labor Day? Yeah.
Yeah, September 12th actually is my send-off day.
Good, good. Well,
Awesome.
best of luck to you. Please stay safe, and thanks for joining us. Rocky,
Thank
as always, thank you, and we'll see everybody next time on the eDiscovery